Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the event focused on sharing Croatian experiences with the peaceful reintegration and return of displaced persons to the Eastern Slavonia, Baranja and Western Sirmium. I will be from now on addressing Slavonia, but meaning also Baranja and Western Sirmium. With us here are co-organizers of this event, representatives of the community of returnees of the Osijek-Baranja County, Mr. Dernay, Hodak, and Ferenc, Professor Ante Nazor, Director of the Croatian Memorial and Documentary Center of the Homeland War, as well as representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Croatia and permanent mission of Croatia to the UN. In the corner of the room, you can pick the catalogue of photographs related to the theme of the event. The author of the photographs is Mr. Branko Pek, and Professor Nazor and Ana Holjevac-Stukovic of the text. My name is Ivan Šimonović, and I will moderate this event. In the program, I'm announced as a member of the UN Human Rights Committee and the former UN Assistant Secretary General for Human Rights. However, during the United Nations Transitional Administration in Eastern Slavonia, UNTES, from January 96 to January 98, I was Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Croatia and the Ambassador of the United Nations in New York. And in these capacities, I cooperated with our distinguished panelists on peace negotiations, reintegration of occupied parts of Croatia, and the return of forcefully displaced persons. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure and honor to moderate this event. In this time of darkness, it offers us some sunshine. There are more conflict, refugees and displaced persons than ever after the World War II. What we offer to you this Friday afternoon is a ray of sunshine. Croatian experience with peaceful reintegration of Eastern Slavonia provides hope that some current conflicts can be peacefully resolved, that forcefully displaced can return to their homes, that reconciliation can be achieved, and finally, that the UN peace operations can be successful in fulfilling complex and demanding mandates. The UN is rightly proud of its role in peaceful reintegration of Eastern Slavonia. At the celebration marking the completion of the UNTAS mandate, which I hosted at the UN headquarters in New York in 1998, the then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan called it one of the most, if not the most successful UN peace operation in the UN history. So, why was the UNTAS so successful? Can the Croatian success of the peaceful reintegration of previously occupied territory and the return of displaced persons to their homes be repeated elsewhere? After the change of control over the territory and return of forcefully displaced, how to avoid outbreaks of violence and new waves of displacement, how to sustain multi-ethnic demographic composition, how to achieve reconciliation after mass atrocities. Finally, what lessons can be learned from the Croatian experience and what are preconditions for their successful implementation elsewhere? The event today will try to provide answers to these challenging questions. Our program will start with remarks of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Croatia, delivered by his Chief of Cabinet, to be followed by a short documentary on the return of refugees and displaced persons to their homes in Eastern Slavonia. Highlight of the event will be the panel, consisting of leading participants in the process of peaceful reintegration, as well as experts who focused their scientific research on this topic. After their initial statements, the floor will be open for questions and answers. So let us start with the welcome address. Croatian Minister of Foreign Affairs Gordan Grlić-Radman was, during the conflict in former Yugoslavia, personally involved in humanitarian affairs. Unfortunately, due to the unforeseen circumstances, he is not with us today, so his introductory remarks will be delivered by his Chief of Staff, Ms. Lara Romano. So, Ms. Romano, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador. Your Excellencies, fellow co-organizers, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to greet you today on behalf of the Minister of Foreign and European Affairs, Gordan Grlić-Radman, at the opening of the panel showcasing one of the most successful peacekeeping missions in the United Nations history, the UNTAES. This UN mission facilitated peaceful reintegration of formerly occupied Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Sirmium with the rest of the Croatian territory. Let me provide the brief historical context. The late 1980s brought about a wave of democratization throughout communist states in Europe, resulting in the breakdown of the Cold War world order and the symbolic dismantling of the Berlin Wall. This process did not circumvent former Yugoslavia. Unlike breakup of the other multinational federal communist countries such as Czechoslovakia or the Soviet Union, the dissolution of former Yugoslavia was not peaceful. The largest of its former republics, Serbia, wanted to expand its borders at the expense of neighboring Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. During the first phase of aggression against independent Croatia, the region of Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Sirmium was the scene of the fiercest joint assaults launched by the pro-Serbian Yugoslav People's Army and the local rebel groups. A large number of Croatian citizens were killed and injured, and tens of thousands were forcefully displaced. Many Croatian towns and villages were occupied and ethnically cleansed. In Eastern Slavonia, material damage to businesses and homes was enormous, and Croatian cultural heritage was deliberately destroyed. After peaceful reintegration, numerous mass graves of Croatian defenders and civilians were exhumed. To this day, we are still searching for 1,740 Croatian citizens gone missing during the war. We will hear more about this today from Ms. Ana Filko. Although Croatia was practically unarmed, it defended itself vigorously. On 2nd of January 1992, a ceasefire agreement was signed in Sarajevo, enabling the deployment of the United Nations Protection Forces, UNPROFOR, to the occupied Croatian territory. The deployment of UN forces in Croatia in the spring of 1992 raised hopes for peaceful reintegration of the occupied Croatian territory. However, due to lack of a clear mandate and obstruction of pro-Serbian forces, forcefully displaced could not return to their homes, and the persecution and killing of non-Serbian population continued. This is why Croatia undertook its own military actions to liberate occupied territories. At the beginning of May 1995, lightning military operation liberated the occupied territory of Western Slavonia. At the same time, the fighting in Bosnia and Herzegovina had escalated. Under these difficult circumstances, a request for help by Alija Izetbegović, president of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to Croatia's President Tudjman, led to the signing of the split agreement on 22nd of July 1995. This was followed by joint liberation operations by the Croatian Army, the Croatian Defense Council, and the Army of Bosnia and Herzegovina. On 5th of August 1995, Croatian Army launched the liberation operation Storm, liberating most of the occupied territory of Croatia. This was followed by the joint operations of the Croatian Army, the Croatian Defense Council, and the Army of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Large territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina was liberated, which changed the balance of power and allowed for successful diplomatic processes under the auspices of the United States of America and the contact group members, culminating in the signing of the Dayton Agreement. During the initial phase of the Dayton peace talks, the agreement was reached on peaceful reintegration of the last remaining occupied territory of the Republic of Croatia, the Eastern Slavonia. It was Croatian President Franjo Tudjman who played the key role in these developments, insisting on peaceful reintegration and the return of forcefully displaced. Following the Dayton Agreement, on 12th of November 1995, the General Framework Agreement on Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Sirmium was signed. Acting as mediators on behalf of the international community were, among others, the U.S. Ambassador Peter Galbraith, who is here with us today, and the Norwegian diplomat Thorvald Stoltenberg, acting on behalf of the UN. The United Nations Transitional Administration in Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Sirmium, UNTAES, was mandated by the Security Council to implement the agreement, which was successfully completed from January 1996 to January 1998. Croatian leadership accepted significant compromises to accomplish peaceful reintegration, enable the return of forcefully displaced, and achieve reconciliation. This includes a broad abolition of Serbian rebels, permission to the representatives of the Serbian minority who were politically active during the occupation to continue carrying out their political activities, rebuilding of destroyed homes and valuable cultural heritage sites without ethnic-based discrimination, as well as a proportional integration of Croatian citizens of Serbian nationality employed at the time in all of the institutions of the Republic of Croatia. Today, Croatia is a prosperous EU member. From a country recipient of international aid and a topic of Security Council discussions, it has become a model of successful post-conflict peace building. The peaceful reintegration of Eastern Slavonia is regarded as a textbook example of pragmatic and constructive solution to a territorial dispute. What is, however, the essence of the Croatian experience with the peaceful reintegration? Primarily, it is that peace is always a better option than war. Even victims of a terrible aggression, atrocities, and ethnic cleansing can, in the name of sustainable peace, opt for reconciliation leading to the happier and more prosperous future. I hope that other countries can benefit out of our experience. This is the main reason why we are organizing this event. I wish you all a successful deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Romano, and thanks to the Minister for your inspirational words opening this event. We shall proceed with screening of the documentary. His author is Mr. Branko Beck, and the documentary is on the aggression and ethnic cleansing of Croatian population from Eastern Slavonia, as well as their successful return to their homes 7 years later.
Nakon jučerašnjih događaja u Hrvatskoj i Sloveniji, kao i današnjih akcija Jugoslavenske armije koje praktički znače uvođenje izvanrednog stanja, situacija je vrlo napeta i iz trenutka u trenutak se pogoršava.
Ali snimke pokazuju što su učinili tenkovi vozeći lijevom i desnom stranom. Vojnici su počeli pucati u barikade.
Na raskrižju u središtu Osijeka kolona oklopnih vozila Jugoslavenske armije i tenkova u prolazu gradskim ulicama bezočno je gazila osobne automobile i izazvala revolt i ogorčenje građana. Očevici javljaju da je bilo pucnjave i da ima ranjenih.
Velikosrpski agresor 5. prosinca 1991. organizirao je opći napad na cjelokupnom osječkom bojištu. Uz velike žrtve branitelja, agresorske snage su ipak zaustavljene kod Nemetina i smjera Klise u pokušaju proboja na istočnom i jugoistočnom ulazu u Osijek.
9 sati 46 minuta. Krećemo iz Osijeka Dravom sa šlepom prema Aljmašu. Idemo sa bolničarima, liječnicima po ranjene. Žene, djeca, stari ulaze na šlep koji je stigao iz Osijeka.
Šta mi si kofer bratu dala da treba? Di mi je brat? Pa ko je sad bio? Pa rekla sam ba ništa nije. Ljudi, moši dete ćete guriti. Aj stani, aj.
Približavamo se kraju, da li kraju ili početku. Za ovih 450-500 ljudi počinje nova sudbina. Sretni su da su se ipak dokopali nekakve takve mirne luke.
Vukovar, stari hrvatski grad na Dunavu, doživio je najtragičniji dan svoje povijesti. 18. studenoga 1991. pomahnitali ga je neprijatelj zaposjeo i počinio teške zločine neviđene još od Drugog svjetskog rata. Branitelji su uzvraćali udarce. Trpinjska cesta postala je grobnicom neprijateljskih oklopnih snaga. Tijekom tromjesečnih borba uništeno je oko 300 tenkova i 30 zrakoplova. 15.000 napadača ubijeno, a još više ranjeno.
I'm proud to be here today when the President of the Republic of Croatia.
Budućnost počinje sada dolaskom hrvatskog predsjednika u Baranju. Budućnost počinje u ovome trenutku kada lokalno stanovništvo Podunavlja od svoga predsjednika očekuje poruku pomirenja. Prošlost ne možemo promijeniti, ali možemo oprostiti. Vjerujem da će ovo područje postati prostor suradnje jer stanovništvo je područja pod međunarodnim nadzorom izlaskom na demokratske izbore 13. travnja pokazalo da žele biti građani Republike Hrvatske.
Štovani i cijenjeni generale Klein, privremeni upravitelj. Dopustite vi ostali da se i prije svega zahvalim privremenom upravitelju, generalu Kleinu, na uspješno završenoj, rekao bih, njegove misije mirne reintegracije Baranje, Istočne Slavonije, Zapadnog Srijema, ustavno-pravni poredak Hrvatske. Biće to jedna od prvih uspješnih misija Ujedinjenih naroda uopće u svijetu. Iako je bilo zahtjeva, ja vam to moram reći i vi morate biti toga svjesni, poslije Bljeska, poslije Oluja, da taj problem riješimo oružanim putem. Opredijelili smo se znači zato da ne idemo oružjem, da idemo mirnim rješenjem, da bismo dokazali da želimo demokratsko, miroljubivo rješenje, da ne želimo da svi Srbi napuste Hrvatsku. Mislim da smo, evo, zahvaljujući zajedničkim naporima i privremene uprave generala Kleina, hrvatske vlade i vas, vašim srpskim predstavnicima ovdje prisutnim i drugima, da smo u tome uspjeli. Moj dolazak ovdje kao predsjednika Hrvatske na čelu visoke hrvatske državne delegacije i vladine i saborske dokaz je znači da je hrvatsko vodstvo odlučno u provedbi, znači, mirne reintegracije. Budite uvjereni da ćemo mi sa svoje strane učiniti svestrane napore da što prije zalječimo rane prošlosti. Neće to biti lako. Sam povratak prognanika zahtijeva istrpljenje i rađaće i nekim sjećanjima na zla i tegobe koje su oni prognanici pretrpjeli i morali trpjeti 6 godina izvan svojih domova. Ali ja pozivam i sve hrvatske prognanike i sve vas da u tom pogledu pronađete u sebi političke mudrosti, razboritosti, da ne bismo obnavljali zla koje smo imali pretrpjeti, radi toga da bismo stvorili što povoljnije uvjete za život i vas, sadašnjeg naraštaja, ali i naše djece i naših unuka. Da se više nikada takva zla ne ponove. Ako smo kazali za hrvatski narod u cjelini, to ponavljam sada i za vas. I za Hrvate ovdje, ali i za Srbe ovdje. I vaša sudbina je u vašim rukama. Hoćete li se, znači, djelotvorno uključiti u izgradnju, znači, svoga života ovdje u Baranji? Mi vam pružamo ustavne i zakonske uvjete. Zato hrvatska vlast u cjelini će ustrajati na tome.
Prvi predsjednik Republike Hrvatske, dr. Franjo Tuđman, s brojnim hrvatskim dužnosnicima i uzvanicima, predstavnicima svih županija, članovima diplomatskog zbora i novinarima, vlakom mira koji je sačinjavala kompozicija od 21 vagona, koliko Hrvatska ima županija, je 8. lipnja 1997. svečano ispraćen iz Zagreba u Vukovar. Tamo ga je svečano dočekalo mnoštvo Hrvata iz čitave Hrvatske, predstavnika svih nacionalnih manjina i predstavnika UNTAES-a. A vlak se kraće vrijeme zadržao u Vinkovcima, gdje ga je pozdravima i pjesmom dočekalo nekoliko tisuća ljudi. U Vukovaru ispred željezničkog kolodvora počela je svečanost hrvatskom državnom himnom i minutom šutnje za branitelje Vukovara. Pozdravljajući skup, prijelazni upravitelj general Klein je podsjetio na riječi predsjednika Tuđmana u Belom Manastiru da je sudbina Hrvata i Srba u njihovim rukama. Obraćajući se okupljenom narodu, predsjednik Tuđman pozvao je na praštanje, jer pobjednik koji ne zna praštati sije klice novih zala, a hrvatski narod to ne želi, niti je želio ovdje u Vukovaru. Dolazak u Vukovar, simbol hrvatske patnje, otpora, težnji za slobodom i povratkom na istočne granice, na Dunav, znak je naše odlučnosti da želimo mir, pomirbu, da želimo stvarati primirje i da više nikada ne dopustimo ono što nam se dogodilo. Ovu hirošimsku panoramu usred Europe, grad Vukovar, lakše ćemo obnoviti u materijalnom smislu, ali teško u našem sjećanju, rekao je dr. Tuđman.
By embracing the basic agreement, Croatia has acknowledged that it could not be whole and united unless it was also tolerant and diverse. We expect Croatia to fulfill its responsibility to guarantee equal treatment and full protection of the rights of all Croatia's citizens.
Mi smo išli 1991. u šlepu sa tim jednim šlepom u progonstvo, a mi smo se vraćali triumfalno sa 60 brodova i brodica Dravom i Dunavom u Gospin Aljmaš. Prvi brod je nosio znakovito ime Vukovar, na pročelju je bio Gospin lik Gospe Aljmaške i za njom 59 brodica i brodova koji su je vraćali narod. Tu je hrvatska vojska, tu je bila hrvatska policija, tu je bilo preko 12.000 štovatelja koji su dopratili Gospu i njezin narod do njezinog Kaljmaša i evo hvala Bogu nakon svega toga mi smo opet svoji na svome.
Mr. Branko Pek, the author of this documentary, is seriously ill, otherwise he would be here with us. So let us use this opportunity to wish him full and speedy recovery. After this moving documentary, we will proceed with the panel discussion. Some participants of this panel significantly contributed to the process of peaceful reintegration of Eastern Slavonia and the return of displaced persons. Mr. Peter Galbraith was the first US ambassador to Croatia from 1993 and until 1998, and personally contributed to the peace negotiations, especially to the basic agreement, and he signed the basic agreement as one of its witnesses. Besides his experience in Eastern Slavonia and Croatia, he has extensive international field experience on leadership positions, including for the United Nations. Ms. Vesna Škare-Ožbolt from 1995 to 1997 served as chair of the Croatian National Advisory Committee in charge of re-establishment of trust, return of refugees, and normalization of life in Eastern Slavonia. She also later served as the Minister of Justice from 2006 to 2009. General Jacques-Paul Klein, whom we seen in the documentary, was the head of UNTA's United Nations Transitional Administration in Eastern Slavonia from January 1996 until August 1997. He is widely praised for his contribution to peaceful reintegration and the return of displaced persons to their homes. He also headed 2 other UN peace operations in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in Liberia. 2 other participants of the panel are historians. Dr. Ana Filko works in the Ministry of Croatian Defenders on the issue of missing persons. She is the author of the doctoral dissertation on the mass graves in Eastern Slavonia. Dr. Ana Holjevac-Tukovic is working in the Croatian Memorial and Documentary Center of the Homeland War. She is an expert on peaceful reintegration of Eastern Slavonia, which was her theme of the doctoral dissertation. Now, let us challenge our panelists with some questions. Let us start with you, Ambassador Galbraith. Peter, you were the first US ambassador to Croatia, and you personally involved in peace negotiations and reintegration of Eastern Slavonia. You have also field experience in other conflict-affected countries, including as high-level UN officials. Now, my question to you is, how would you compare the role and influence of the United States and the United Nations on peaceful reintegration of Eastern Slavonia? You have the floor.
Thank you. I'll begin by making a simple point. In addition to being the mediator of the agreement, I signed it. Actually, I signed it twice, because even though it was a peace agreement, which was an agreement to reintegrate Eastern Slavonia into Croatia, the two parties, or to be precise, the Serbian party, refused to meet face-to-face with the Croatian government to sign the peace agreement. So it was signed on November 12th at 1 o'clock in Erdut and at 4 o'clock in Zagreb. So if you think of such an unpromising start, what is remarkable is how successful it was. It was the one successful, completely successful mission the United Nations undertook in the former Yugoslavia, which I believe then and till this day was the largest peacekeeping operations by number of participants, by expense ever undertaken by the United Nations. It was the one successful operation. And from my point of view, most significantly, it was the one place in the former Yugoslavia where control shifted from one nation, one ethnic group, in this case from the Serbs to the Croatian government, and the group losing control stayed. This was a huge achievement. And I'll say a word about why I think it was such a success. But I'd like to begin by just saying a word about the negotiating process. Initially, when the breakup of Yugoslavia took place, the negotiations were taken over by the United Nations and by the European community. And you had the International Conference for the former Yugoslavia. And there were a number of agreements, basically none of which worked. And both Europe and the United Nations were impotent. At the beginning, the United States, the Bush administration, did not want to get involved. George Bush Sr. had had this great victory in the Gulf War. He was looking at re-election. When the Yugoslavia broke up, the Secretary of State, James Baker, said, "We don't have a dog in that fight." And frankly, when President Clinton came in, I was the first ambassador appointed by him, so we didn't even have an ambassador till I came along. The United States was reluctant to get involved. But in the end, we could not build a promising post-Cold War world when you had what was going on in Bosnia and Sarajevo and what had happened in Croatia in front of everybody every day. And so we got involved. The peace process that ultimately resulted in the Erdut Agreement, which was the legal basis for UNTAES, was something that began in April of 1994 at the request of President Tudjman. But the political process began in September of 1994 when I realized that the other tracks of ceasefire, economic agreement were just not going to go anyplace. We needed to go to the political process. And we had a number of proposals. And I won't go into them. Some were more popular than others. Some were quite unpopular. But, and I say this and I look at my friend from Ukraine at the end of the table, because they were always about several fundamental principles. The first is that there would be no change in borders. The territorial integrity, any peace agreement was going to be based on the territorial integrity of Croatia within its internationally recognized borders. Second, that every person who had been ethnically cleansed, displaced, had a right to return home and to recover their property, or if their property was destroyed, to compensation. And that every person who had fled regardless of their ethnicity, would have the same rights. And these rights would apply to Croats, Serbs, and incidentally, Eastern Slavonia wasn't just Croats and Serbs. It was Hungarians, it was Slovaks, it was Czechs, and other nationalities as Ukrainians. Yeah. So that was a fundamental principle. And through all the drafts, and there were many different proposals, those principles remained. The actual agreement, the text of it was agreed on October 3rd, 1995. And then we set off to Dayton without having a signature, but an agreement. And I met with Milosevic on the November 1st. It was actually a meeting hosted by Secretary Christopher with the President Tudjman, President Milosevic, their respective teams. And in the course of the meeting, Milosevic consumed a bottle and a half of red wine. And he made clear that the agreement was done, and at one point in the process, he would play the card, and that was ultimately on November 12th. And I think the agreement provided a very good legal basis for the peaceful reintegration. That is to say, it made clear that the destination was the return of this territory to Croatia. It provided for a transitional administrator. It provided for demilitarization. It provided for the establishment of a multi-ethnic police force. And it had multiple, and these were near and dear to my heart, guarantees of human rights, as well as of the right of people to return. But the success of the agreement was not the paper. It was the commitment of, first, it was the involvement of the United Nations, and I'm going to give great credit to my friend Jacques Klein, who made himself into a larger-than-life character, dealing with the local population and also with President Tudjman, and to the UN forces. But fundamentally, it was a commitment by the government of Croatia, in spite of everything that had happened, to make this agreement a success, and of the local Serb population, or at least that part of it, to stay. Now, in terms of UN missions, the truth is, the UN is usually given peacekeeping missions when there is no peace. And so, not surprisingly, they fail. There have only been a handful of transitional administrations, and I was part of the next one, the UN Transitional Administration in East Timor, probably the most ambitious UN operation ever, with full legislative, judicial, and executive authority to take East Timor from having been part of Indonesia to independence. But that worked because the destination was where everybody in East Timor wanted to go. This wasn't so clear in Eastern Slavonia. There were plenty of people who didn't really want that destination. There were, well, most of the Serb population, if they'd had a vote, they certainly wouldn't have wanted to be part of Croatia. And there were people in Croatia who didn't want any Serbs to remain. So in that sense, it was much more difficult. And yet, again, because of the commitment of the parties, it succeeded. Just in terms of US versus UN peacekeeping, I think we have to reflect on the 1990s as a unique moment in modern history. At that time, amazingly, for someone who had grown up in the Cold War and been part of it as a diplomat, the Soviet Union, not only did communism, the Soviet Union disappeared. Russia had an economy that was smaller than that of the Netherlands. China hadn't risen. And America was in an incredible position to use its power as we did. And the United Nations had become Europe hadn't yet organized, so it wasn't effective. That moment has long passed. it was inevitable that Russia would recover, that China would rise, that Europe would organize. And frankly, as an American, I have to say, my own country has made such mistakes in this century. I could go on a long time, but we are not going to do that. So my message is, where there's a commitment, it can be a success. But frankly, it's going to be up to Europe. And I again see my friend from Ukraine, and I cannot help think but of this much, much larger conflict now underway, that it's going to have to be an effort principally led from Europe, but involving all of us to resolve that problem.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Galbraith, for sharing with us your personal experiences and your frank assessment. Special thanks for being so clear that preconditions for sustainable peace is sticking to principles of international law and human rights that applied to challenges in Eastern Slavonia, but continues to apply to challenges we are facing all over the world. Now to Minister Vesna Škare-Ožbolt. Vesna, as a high-level government official involved in peaceful reintegration, you were specifically in charge of post-conflict confidence building and restoration of trust, the return of displaced persons, and organization of daily life. That seems a lot. Which were the toughest challenges you were facing, and how did you manage to overcome them?
Thank you, Ivan. Well, the peaceful reintegration of Croatian Danube region was one of the most demanding tasks of my career, definitely. I was responsible for rebuilding trust after the conflict, helping displaced persons to return home and bringing normal life back to a region that had suffered deeply during the war. When we started, it felt almost like mission impossible. The area was destroyed, people were afraid, communities were divided, institutions were not working. Croatia was still searching almost 2,000 missing persons. At that time, trust was broken on all levels and on all sides. And yet, we managed something very rare. We reintegrated the territory into Croatia without a single shot fired. Today, the peaceful reintegration is seen as one of the most successful UN missions ever carried out. And let me share with you the three biggest challenges I was faced with and we were faced as a government and as a state. The first challenge was rebuild trust. In 1996, the region was full of fear. Croatian families wanted to return to their homes, but many had lost loved ones. The Serbian population was afraid of revenge after years of propaganda, and both sides were, let's say, living with trauma. In this situation, trust could not be built with big speeches. It has to be built through the very straight and honest action. We made one message very clear. Croatia would be firm but fair. Second message was war crimes would never be forgiven. But we would not blame all communities for the actions of individuals. We spent thousands of hours meeting people in villages, schools, community centers. So the second challenge was helping displaced persons to return home. Return after war is never easy. Many houses were burned, mined, or occupied. Roads and services were damaged. Some people returned to ruins, others returned to neighbors who had been on the opposite side of the conflict. So return was not only a legal process, it was emotional and very, very personal. So we took, let's say, several practical steps. Government, Croatian state, rebuilt homes and repaired infrastructure. Create safe conditions for return through multi-ethnic transitional police forces, supervised by UN and UNTAS. We launched a pilot project of return to show the safe and voluntary return was possible. We worked actually every day to solve property issues and provide security to families who were returning. Our guiding principle was simple. Every return must be safe, voluntarily, and based on human dignity. Third challenge was rebuilding everyday's life. Peace is not only about stopping violence. Peace means a child going back to school, doctor return to the clinic, shop reopen, job becoming available, and institutions working normally. To rebuild everyday life, we introduced several important measures. First was to introduce Croatian currency. Then creating jobs in public institutions. Then we adopted law on convalidation. We passed the law to legally recognize all everyday documents created during the occupation, birth, deaths, marriages, school records, and other certificates. With this law, thousands of people would have fallen into the legal limbo. So that was a human and practical solution. Then we have amnesty to those who carried weapons but did not commit war crimes. This was one of the most difficult political decisions. Every day people still, and today, even today, people still debate it. But at that moment, amnesty made peaceful reintegration possible, and war crimes were never part of the amnesty. That I must underline. Rights and guarantees for Serbian community. At the end of that process of peaceful reintegration, Croatian government issued the letter of intent guaranteeing cultural and educational autonomy through the Joint Council of Municipalities, a fair representation of Serbs in the key ministries, for example, interior, justice, education, and culture, and participation in the parliamentary committees. A fair solution for those who wanted to move to Serbia, who didn't want to recognize Croatian state and who didn't want to stay in Croatia. That was resolved through the Agency of Real Estate Transactions, offered a legal and transparent way to sell the properties. So together with these steps created both rights and practical support, the combination needed to make peace real. So why peaceful reintegration mattered? After the military operations Flash and Storm, Croatia had the ability to end the occupation by force. But we chose peace. That choice saved lives, Croatian and Serbian. It prevented the new refugees crisis, it supported the Dayton negotiations, and it showed that Croatia was a responsible member of the international community. And choosing peace is not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of strength. So to conclude, this peaceful reintegration of Croatian Danube region was not only a political process, it was a human process. It required patience, courage, empathy, and the belief that people who once faced each other in conflict could live together again. For me, it begins as an impossible mission, but political will, persistence, and truth in the people made this impossible possible. So, and lesson from the Croatian story, I can say is very clear. Never give up on peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Minister, for your valuable insight perspective, peaceful reintegration, return of forcibly displaced, and reconciliation is very demanding, but it's worthwhile of all efforts. I repeat the offer of Croatian government. We are ready to share our experience with all countries that could benefit out of them. Unfortunately, General Jacques Klein, former transitional administrator of Eastern Slavonia, could not join us in person, but he will address us virtually. Jacques, besides UNTAES, also headed 2 other UN operations in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in Liberia. So, Jacques, what made the UNTAES operation so special? Which factors contributed mostly to its success? Jacques is thinking.
I want to express my thanks and appreciation to the Croatian Ministry of Foreign Affairs for hosting this conference and inviting me to make a few comments. Only age and ongoing mobility issues precluded me from being with you today. Before history forgets us all, it might be well to remember the historical background of the mission and the personalities that made the mission a success. Obviously, President Tudjman, Foreign Minister Kostovic, Mrs. Vesna Skari-Ozbolt in the President's office, Dr. Ivan Vrkic, my day-to-day interlocutor in the region, and Dr. Vojislav Stanimirovic, representing the local population in the region, who always cooperated in spite of the many threats being made on his own life. Our 2 excellent military commanders, Major Generals Joseph Scoops and Vili Onse, and the local Serb commander, General Lonchar, who faithfully carried out the terms of the mandate in a professional manner. The government of Belgium played a lead role in supporting the mission and providing us a Belgian para-commando unit for headquarters security. The Slovak Engineering Battalion, using tanks with flays and chains in front of them, cleared thousands of miles across the fields of Baranja, Western Serbia. Our Polish GROM, Special Forces Unit, provided my security and captured the first indicted war criminal under seal indictment in the former Yugoslavia, who we sent to The Hague. Our force structure, Belgian, Russian, Ukrainian, Jordanian, Pakistani, and a number of other troop contributors all performed in a highly professional manner. My UN staff, English secretary, Armenian deputy, Russian political counselor, Australian chief of civil affairs, American public affairs officers, and countless other dedicated international civil servants and professionals. Franjo Tudjman will always be remembered as a seminal figure in the history of Croatia. I could not have found a more ideal partner to work with to undertake the task of implementing the United Nations mandate in Eastern Slavonia and to begin the process of reconciliation and healing required after such a bitter conflict. His primary goal and major interest was in restoring Croatian sovereignty in Eastern Slavonia and ending the United Nations presence in Croatia. We faced difficult challenges. There were spoilers on both sides who persisted in attempting to undermine the terms of Security Council Resolution 1037. Working together, we marginalized the right-wing opposition and their attempts to undermine the process of peaceful reintegration and ultimately successfully achieve the mission objectives. The key objective was to facilitate the peaceful reintegration of Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Serbia into the Republic of Croatia. The goals were to bring the region demilitarized and secure under the sovereign control of the government of Croatia, to repair and retain the multi-ethnic character of the region, to promote an atmosphere of confidence among all residents, irrespective of their ethnic origin, to enable all refugees and displaced persons the right to return freely to their homes and there live in a condition of security, to promote respect for the highest standards of human rights and fundamental freedoms, to promote redevelopment and reconstruction of the region in harmony with the overall plan that the government of Croatia had, and to organize free and fair elections no later than 30 days before the end of the mandate. As the transition administrator and chief of mission, I had overall command and control responsibilities and day-to-day management and authority of a multinational force of 5,000 military personnel, 350 international police officers, 100 multinational military observers, 300 international civil servants, and a local national staff of 600. We administered a $370 million budget and forged a unified and effective team, which included personnel from 28 different countries. We planned and executed the dangerous and complex demobilization of over 17,000 Serb forces, including several criminal paramilitary units, and successfully captured the vital Jelatovci oil fields and successfully returned them to the government of Croatia's control. We negotiated a comprehensive structure of minority rights. We scheduled municipal elections for over 150,000 voters and facilitated the return of 100,000 displaced persons in the region. In conjunction with the International Criminal Tribunal, we located, detained, and arrested the first war criminal under sealed indictment in the former Yugoslavia, and after a 2-year mandate, returned a demilitarized region to Croatian national sovereignty. The source of UNTAS needs to be seen on 3 levels: the people, the UN, and Croatia. The people. When UNTAS began, there were 3 scenarios that was likely to happen. 1, Croatia and Serbia would resume the war with a massive loss of life and destruction of property. All the Serbs would leave, destroying their homes, public buildings, and infrastructure, or a small minority of Serbs would stay, while others would leave after destroying the infrastructure. In fact, over 80% of the original Serb residents remained, and those who did not probably had blood on their hands. Even the oil fields were returned to Croatian ownership early in the mandate, and the region was returned intact to Croatian government control after 2 years, ready for the return of its Croatian inhabitants. For the UN, UNTAS was a rare success. The region was returned intact to Croatian control. Our mission was finished on time and under budget. It demonstrated that with the right leadership and resources, UN peacekeeping had a valuable role to play in achieving peace and security. The fact that the UN left Croatia after 2 years, while international forces remained elsewhere in the region for 20 years or more, was significant and a testament to the success of the UNTAS mission. For Croatia, this was the last essential step to complete its integration and independence. I explained to the local population at the beginning of the mandate that the notion of succession is over, and that the old slogan was, if you try to ride a dead horse, it will not carry you very far. And I also cautioned the Croatian government that it's always best to give your enemy a golden bridge to retreat on. As an aside, a number of years ago, I briefed individuals in the United States and the Ukraine. I believe that the UNTAS could have been a model for what could have been done in eastern Croatia, in eastern Ukraine. Unfortunately, everyone seemed to have other agendas. Thank you for inviting me, and I wish you a successful conference and the best for the holidays.
Thank you, General Klein, for being so clear and straightforward in describing and analyzing Operation UNTAS and its contribution to the return of displaced persons in Eastern Slavonia. You helped us to put pieces of a puzzle together, the role of the Croatian government and local actors, as well as international community in peaceful reintegration. Now to Dr. Anna Filko from the Ministry of Croatian Defenders. 30 years after the end of war in Croatia, we are still facing some conflict-related challenges. Can you briefly tell us something on legacy of mine pollution and the mine clearance efforts. Also, Croatia is still, as we heard, searching for 1,740 missing persons. Finding their whereabouts seems very important, not only for their families, but also for confidence building and reconciliation. Can you tell us something more about it?
Sure. I'm going to keep it short regarding the contaminated mine area, since Croatia will be mine-free by the March 2026. But during and after peaceful reintegration of Croatia's Danube region, the presence of mine-suspected areas represented one of the most complex security challenges. Large parts of territory were contaminated with various types of military and improvised explosive devices, endangering the return of the population, hindering infrastructure reconstruction, but it also was complicating process of finding potential burial sites. After the war, to be precise, an area of around 1,174 square kilometers was classified as mine suspected. To be more symbolic, or to see it clearly, it's around 1,064,000 football fields. Right now we have 49 square kilometers of mostly hard to reach area that is under mines in the Republic of Croatia. So systematic demining was carried out through the cooperation of state institutions, local communities and international partners. It became crucial precondition for stabilization, return and the continuation of search for missing persons. Over the years, what we also have to say, and we all saw a broken chair in these premises in front of the UN. We have 130 killed or wounded deminers so far in the Republic of Croatia. It is a tragic reminder that long after the guns fall silent, the consequences of war continue to claim victims and shape everyday lives. So after this brief information about the demining activities in the Republic of Croatia, which was the most complex security challenge, I'm going to talk a bit more about one of the most deepest humanitarian and societal challenge still so far in the Republic of Croatia, which is the issue of missing persons. We now know that nothing defines the civilizational maturity of a state as clearly as its attitude towards those who were forcibly taken and whose traces have disappeared. This is a matter of dignity, but also a fundamental trust in the justice of the post-war order. We understood very clearly that such processes cannot be managed ad hoc. So already in 1991, we established specialized bodies for data collection, humanitarian exchanges, the release of detainees from Serbian concentration camps, and the identification of victims from the mass and individual graves. This institutional response created a mid-wartime destruction, enabled more than 18,000 detained and missing persons to be registered within the first few years, of whom more than 7,815 were found and released from Serbian concentration camps. We found mortal remains of 5,297 victims in more than 150 mass graves and 1,400 individual graves. To also make it clear, Republic of Croatia has 128 cities, which means that we have more mass graves in the Republic of Croatia than cities. We have 1,244 islands, which means that we have more individual graves that we found than the islands. So the whole approach on which these results are found later involved into today's Directorate for Detained and Missing Persons, which is a body in the Ministry of Croatian Veterans Affairs. It is a professional body which unifies all competences in the search for the missing persons. As we heard, we have 1,740 missing persons in the whole formerly occupied territory of the Republic of Croatia. And of that number, 545 persons are still missing from the Croatian Danube region. So we also, in 2019, adopted an Act on Persons Missing in the Homeland War. It act for the first time precisely regulated responsibilities, standard operating procedures, protection of families, and the requirement for interdepartmental cooperation. This legal framework has given stability to the process. Also, since 2016, Croatia has implemented a fully enhanced search methodology which is a combination of field research, detailed analysis of former documentation, archival sources, intelligence information, and so on. So in the last 9 years, we identified 323 persons. All of this is the result solely of Croatian institutions. When we talk about our experience, especially in Eastern Slavonia, there is a more difficult side of post-war processes. The peaceful reintegration, it was, as we could all see, a major civilizational step forward for both Croatia and for international community. But that phase did not bring automatically the reintegration of the truth regarding the missing persons. During that period, before and after, the remains of a large number of victims were moved from their primarily burial sites. Archival documentation was taken to Serbia, and key data on abductions, detentions, burial sites, and relocation of grave sites remain inaccessible till today. Also, war criminals, the persons who know where the burial sites are, ran away to Serbia. That is why Croatia's experience is important for today's global discussions, especially to our partners in Ukraine. It shows that even when weapons fall silent, silence about the fate of the missing can remain the heaviest burden for families and for society. Precisely because of this, Croatia has developed a model that is based on 3 pillars. The first is institutional consistency. So the process of search cannot depend on political cycles. It must be stable, structurally grounded, and sustainable in the long term. So this has proven in Croatia as essential for continuity and results, exactly with these results since 2016, which I already mentioned. The second is a humanitarian approach based on the right of families. Families of the missing cannot be passive observers. They are the central subjects of the process. The third is methodological modernity. Based on this experience, we have also 3 broader lessons from our experience. First, post-war processes cannot be considered complete without resolving the fate of the missing. You may rebuild infrastructure, restore institutions, reopen schools and hospitals, but if families do not know where their loved ones are, society remains wounded. The search for the missing is not the final detail of reconciliation, it is its prerequisite. Second, peaceful reintegration requires long-term commitment even after the formal process ends. And third, the most important component of success is transparency and credibility of the institutions. Only bodies that act professionally, openly, and with constant communication with families can maintain public trust and prove that the search is not a formality but a genuine state obligation. Croatia will continue this mission until the very last family finds its answer. Because the truth about the missing is not only a question of the past, it is a condition for a just and stable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Filko, for reminding us that the plight of families of the missing persons continues until the issue is resolved. If disease cannot return to Eastern Slavonia or to other formerly occupied parts of Croatia, at least their mortal remains should have a proper burial. This issue must be resolved for the sake of their suffering families, as well as to contribute to strengthening of mutual trust and reconciliation. Our last panelist is Dr. Ana Holjevac-Tukovic from the Croatian Memorial and Documentary Center of the Homeland War. The theme of your doctoral dissertation was peaceful reintegration of Eastern Slavonia. Why did you focus your research on this particular topic, and what were your main findings?
Thank you very much for the question. And first of all, it's my pleasure to be here and have an opportunity to tell you something about peaceful reintegration and the political situation before the peaceful reintegration. We heard here today that the UNTES is the most successful UN mission in the world. And I would like to emphasize that the Croatian government and international community proposed the peaceful reintegration to the rebel Serb between 1992 to 1995. And in the 1995, the leadership of the rebel Serb turned down another international proposal, also known as the Plan Z4, proposed based on a negotiation to end the Croatian war for independence by political settlement. The plan envisioned exceptionally wide-ranging autonomy for the Serbs in Croatia. We could set a state within a state in the area of Knin and Glina, which were the most municipality with majority of the Serbian population. Since all attempts of Croatian government and the rebel Serb failed, the Croatian government launched a military operation Flash and Storm. But I would like to tell you something about numbers. At that time, Croatia had registered 210,000 displaced persons in Croatia. Of those, 83,000 displaced persons from Croatian Danube region and 126 displaced persons from the occupied areas that would be liberated in the mentioned operation, and 188,000 refugees from Bosnia and Herzegovina and Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. This means that at that time, the Republic of Croatia was caring for a total of 399,000 displaced persons and refugees. After the military operation in the May and in August 1995, the Croatian forces liberated the most of the occupied territory in the Republic of Croatia. And also important to say that create a precondition to break the siege of Bihać and avoid a tragedy similar to one that occurred a month earlier when the Serbian units killed 8,000 Muslim Bosniaks. And after the military operation Flash and Storm and creating a new geopolitical situation, the leaders of the Serbs became aware that the Croatian Danube region could not remain under their occupation, and I would say the peaceful reintegration became possible mainly because Serbian forces were defeated in Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. They were only willing to negotiate it after they were defeated. And during the Dayton negotiation on the 12th November 1995, the basic agreement on the region of the Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Serbia was signed, both in Erdut and in Zagreb. And basic agreement predicted a transitional area for 1 to 2 years, in which the Croatian Danube region would be under administrative supervision of the United Nations. And soon after that, the General Security adopted a resolution regarding establishment UNTAES, and the initial duration of the peacekeeping operation was to be on the 12 months and was to employ 5,000 troops. And at that time, it's also important to say that the main goals of the missions were to return the demilitarized area of the Croatian Danube region under the control of the government of Croatia, and maintain the multi-ethnicity of the region, and to make sure that the refugees and exiles and displaced persons can safely return to their homes, and also establish public institutions. We heard a lot about peaceful integration, so I will just add that one of the most important among the goals of the mission was the demilitarization of the region, and the demilitarization of the Croatian Danube region was completed successfully. It included 15 to 20,000 Serbian soldiers, and in addition to demilitarization, the UN also organized the weapons buyback program, in which UNTAES and Croatian government collected munition and weapons from Serbian civilians. And this program was rated by the UN as very successful. And with other aspects of the peace process, enabled the stability of the UNTAES administrated area. And the government of the Republic of Croatia paid about $1.6 million for the implementation of this program. Another key moment in the restoring Croatian legal authority to the region was to holding the local election for municipal and cities councils, as well for the county assemblies of Osječko-baranjska and Vukovarsko-srijemska. By voting on the election, members of Serbian minority from Vukovar and Danube region were able to choose their representative in local government. And after the election, the Serbian population took part in the Croatian political life and joined its executive government. And as we heard, because of many wartime crimes committed by Serbs, Croatia had to accept painful compromises in order to successfully complete reintegration. One of these was the amnesty law, which pardoned participants of the armed rebellion from criminal prosecution. And this caused strong reactions, but perpetrators of war crimes could not be excused from criminal responsibility. The government of the Republic of Croatia guaranteed members of the Serbian community a wide range of political and institutional rights. And Croatia expended enormous financial and human resources in the reintegration process. Croatia spent an estimated about the end of the September of 1997, $1.7 billion for the reconstruction and revitalization of the Eastern Slavonia and other reintegrated territories. And as we said, the completion of the peaceful integration of the Croatian Danube region was celebrated on January 15, 1998, and the peaceful integration of the Croatian Danube region was the UN's most successful peace project, which helped save many lives. Credit for the peaceful integration should be given to the Croatian state leadership and the international community and the political representatives of ethnic Serbs. And also, by the end, I would like to say that the Croatia was one of the rare countries who, after successful military operation, ended the war by the peaceful way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Holjevac-Stukovic, for sharing us your interesting and relevant findings and analysis. Our panelists could obviously speak about this topic for hours, but now I open the floor for questions and comments. When taking the floor, please introduce yourself, and if you want to direct questions to particular panelists, please make it clear. The floor is open. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the panelists for their very impressive contributions. It was very, very moving and very impressive indeed. So on behalf of the European Union, we warmly congratulate, of course, the Republic of Croatia on the 30th anniversary of the peaceful reintegration of Eastern Slavonia, Baranja, and Western Sirmium. This historic achievement under the UNTAS remains one of the UN's most successful peace operations, or as some of you have said, actually probably the most successful operation. 30 years on, we recall how the Erdut Agreement and the UN-led transitional authority enabled the restoration of Croatia's constitutional and legal order without a single shot fired, as you also pointed out today. The peaceful return of territory and the voluntary return of displaced persons demonstrated that diplomacy and cooperation can indeed overcome even most difficult legacies of conflict. We commend the leadership of Croatia and the constructive engagement of all communities, as well as the strong support of the United Nations and international partners. The protection of the rights of persons belonging to minorities, including guarantees for participation, security, and return, was a cornerstone of the reintegration process and remains vital for lasting peace. We think that Croatia's progress, culminating in its accession to the European Union, illustrates how commitment to these principles can underpin stability, reconciliation, and European integration. As we mark this anniversary, allow me to highlight the broader lessons of the Croatian experience, and thank you for also drawing them out here today. UNTAS shows that when the international community works in genuine partnership with national authorities, and when human rights and minority rights are upheld, and when dialogue prevails over force, sustainable peace becomes possible. And we think these lessons remain very essential for addressing contemporary conflicts around the world. In closing, allow me to bid warm appreciation to all those who contributed to this exemplary achievement. And we encourage all member states and partners to draw inspiration from this experience and to continue pursuing peaceful solutions rooted in dignity, sovereignty, and the protection of all community and all human rights. Thank you so much.
I thank you very much for your warm words and congratulations. The floor is open. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I actually have a question for you. But before I ask my question, let me just personally say that when all this happened, I was in school. I had the privilege of growing up in safety and security. But of course, the news reached us. I was learning English at this point, and I remember your name, Ambassador Galbraith, because I was wondering how on earth do you pronounce this? I think I've made a bit of progress since then. In Germany at that time, we were at a point where we had our own history with internal displacement and refugees. You know, first, it actually had a big influence on the German position on Croatia, that there were many of my predecessors in the Foreign Service who were themselves refugees from Eastern Prussia and who saw the women with headscarves and the carts and the donkeys and whatever you use when you have to save your life. And something clicked inside them, and that also had a huge influence on the German position on Croatia. And then we had the refugees coming from Eastern Germany to Western Germany, and we thought in 1991 it's all over now. And it wasn't. because it started again. And now, so many years later, there's still people who have to leave their homes to find safety and security. This is Geneva, where so many humanitarian organizations of the United Nations have their headquarters. So I would like to ask the panel, what was the role of the humanitarian institutions of the United Nations? How did you cooperate with UNHCR, and how do you assess their contribution with what is going on today? Thank you very much.
I thank you very much. The floor is open.
Well, shouldn't we respond to his question?
Let's group questions there. So I see, just turn me the table. Okay.
I mean, you named, so I had to. Thank you for this event. I think it's a magnificent example, not only a remembering of what has happened, and in a very correct and very balanced way, but also a magnificent example of how this example should be used and could represent a model for many other situations that we have there. The starting point is because it started with governments. Are governments who make wars, but governments are also who make peace. And this is a starting point for all of us who work at the United Nations, who are there to ensure that our humanitarian action follows the political action. We cannot, it's easy to look at the UN as always the culprit of lack of action. The main point is governments are behind the definite choice. The second point that I think that you pointed very well, it was the fact that this was not a one-way return. This was a multi-way return. I remember, I was working in CNIN at that time. The good thing of the UN is that, of UNHCR mainly, is that they were moving us like a fool. So we could see the same situation from different perspectives. So we always had that different aspect. But the one of UNTAES and Eastern Slavonia was mainly that there were people also leaving the area, leaving the houses, leaving and moving back to the other areas, and also to the liberated areas in CNIN and in the north. So it was definitely a political development that brought to a overall interest of all. At the same time, there were the refugees who were, because of the return from Eastern Slavonia, they could come back from Bosnia after, and a few of them from Serbia. That political talk, that political way created such a favorable environment that created all the support for the actual new settlement of the region, including the EU moving up. Thank you very much.
We thank you very much, and I open the floor for any other intervention. If not, then I would thank for your questions and comments, and I'm sure that our panelists are keen to respond. But I would also ask each and every panelist to identify Croatian experiences that can be most useful for other countries to peacefully end conflicts, reintegrate previously occupied areas, and facilitate the return of displaced persons and reconciliation. So let's use the order we were using before. Ambassador Galbraith, 2 minutes for you.
The first point I'd make is the humanitarian entities did enormously important work. and they were much maligned. And the UNPROFOR did important work. It simply, we know the futility of the blue helmets and the white vehicles when there's actual shooting, but the peace process would not have been possible without the United Nations presence. I mean, I was the negotiator and writing up the Erdut agreement, but I could never have gone to Erdut, never crossed the front lines without the UN. And we could not have, we would not have had the understanding of the local figures and what their interests were without the UN presence. So it was an essential component. And of course, UNHCR, ICRC, humanitarian agencies saved hundreds of thousands of lives. Now, in terms of the lessons, I want to come back to the point I made. Fundamental to the peace process in Croatia and Bosnia was no change in borders. And there were plenty of desires of mediators to change borders. Frankly, I had a constant battle with David Owen, the EU representative, who wanted to redraw the borders by taking Croatian territory above Brčko and creating a corridor connecting the two parts of the Serbian entity. And my view is, the moment you open the door to any of, and incidentally, there were also people in the region who were also kind of tempted by various ideas. But my point is, the moment you open the door to the change of borders, it becomes impossible to have a lasting peace. If you stick to the principle, even if you have a ceasefire, and obviously I'm thinking here of Ukraine, yes, you may wish to have a ceasefire. You may wish to have a frozen conflict. But what you never want is for somebody to engage in aggression and succeed in annexing territory. And if you think about it, the great achievement of the United Nations of the post-1945 settlement was that once you were a member of the United Nations, once you had internationally recognized territory, a country could not go in, seize the territory, annex it, and get away with it. That was the source of war for thousands of years, including, of course, World War II. And we drew a line at it. Saddam Hussein tried, he failed. Milosevic tried, they failed. They had to accept the internationally recognized states of the former Yugoslavia. And I say, the same point applies to Ukraine. It has internationally recognized borders. It is not a disputed territory. The borders were settled. And so, yes, there's good reason to want to have a ceasefire, stop the killing, but you will not have a durable peace if it involves annexation by Russia of any Ukrainian territory.
Thank you, Minister Skare-Osbolt.
Yes, I would outline a few essential lessons from our Croatian example for countries facing similar situation as we were. First, peace must be a strategic choice. Croatia chose dialogue even when military options were available. So that decision saved lives and created space for sustainable solution. Second, human security always comes first. Demilitarization, creating life conditions for civilians, and reducing immediate risks must happen earlier, even before full political agreements are reached. Third, trust-building measures must begin on the ground, not in the conference rooms, but with ordinary people. Fourth, Justice and reconciliation must go together. War crimes must be prosecuted, but entire communities cannot be treated as collectivity guilties. This balance is extremely difficult, but essential. And finally, rebuilding life, give people a reason and sense of peace. And this Croatian experience do not offer a ready-made model, but they show that even after deep conflict, peaceful reintegration is possible when there is a political will, patience, and focus on human dignity. Thank you.
Dr. Filko?
Thank you. Oh, sorry. I'm going to make just a brief information regarding the question about those humanitarian institutions that were in the territory of Republic of Croatia during the war, but that actually had a really important role regarding the process of finding missing persons. Of course, there is ICRC, which made or had a crucial role since the beginning of the war, and their mandate was crucial in exchanging prisoners of war. We know that their mandate is also visiting various concentration camps. A lot of them were in the territory of the Republic of Serbia. So with their visiting of prisoners of war, they actually guaranteed their safety, and a lot of them stayed alive because of the ICRC. Also, there were various commissions under the UN, also special rapporteurs such as Tadeusz Mazowiecki. Then there was a commission of experts which actually found first mass grave in the Republic of Croatia that was Ovčara mass grave, and the ICTY actually did the first exhumation of that mass grave. So that's just a small part of the really important role of different various humanitarian organizations here. Actually, now the process is in the hands of the institutions in the Republic of Croatia. And it turned out that even though we now have different multilateral agreements regarding missing persons with countries that were also affected by the war in the former Yugoslavia, it seems that for solving the problem of finding 1,740 missing persons is bilateral cooperation, mostly with Serbia. So the reconciliation cannot be built on silence, nor can peace rest on withholding the truth. Thank you.
I thank you, Dr. Pilko. Now to Dr. Holjevac-Stukovic.
Thank you. For the end, I was just highlight the most important facts. The UNTES mission and the peaceful integration of the Croatian Danube region shows that the lasting peace is possible only with a clear political plan, a strong international mission, and a gradual handover of authority. And the case steps include demilitarization and control over weapons, and safe return of a displaced person, and most of all, establishing of justice. And the good cooperation between local authorities, minority communities, and international communities, together with long-term investment in reconstruction, is essential for stability and peaceful coexistence. Thank you very much.
So I thank our panelists for their insightful remarks. Although there are still some challenges to full reconciliation in Eastern Slavonia, there obviously are some important lessons to be learned from Croatian experience. Let me summarize and name a few factors that contributed to peace, reintegration, and return unforcefully displaced. commitment of the parties on the ground, robust support of the international community, precise mandate of the Antares operation, strong leadership, and finally, the creativity in looking for solutions. However, it is also clear that the key for successful implementation of these lessons is the political will of both local actors and the international community. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude. The return of forcefully displaced persons to their homes is their human right. To help them to exercise this right is an obligation not only for the local actors, but of the international community at large, including the United Nations. As the international community, we have been failing forcefully displaced too often and for too long. To return home is their right, and it is our duty to help them. I sincerely hope that this event will contribute to this noble goal. Globally, I thank you all and have a good weekend. To start the weekend well, you are kindly invited to the reception hosted by Permanent Mission of the Republic of Croatia at the 8th floor. We can continue our discussion over the drinks. Thank you.